for our listener, if you don't know, Google has a button you can press. Quite literally, there's a box you can check, and it basically asks Google to prioritize new customer acquisition. And
Mhm.
man, it just tanks campaigns. To date, I have yet to see it work one time.
Well, of course it would, right?
Right, right. Well, what's interesting is it's strange. Either I see two things happening. The first one is the campaign just goes to absolute shit and doesn't sell anything, or it continues to sell to repeat clients, and Google's unable to identify who a repeat client is.
Huh.
Um, every now and again, you see a minor lift in new customers, but it's not enough to justify just leaving it to that one box and letting go.
Right.
So I wouldn't, I'll continue to test it, and like we continue to test everything. And that's the other really frustrating thing about Google is you can never be sure what happened yesterday is what will happen tomorrow. It feels a lot like being gaslit. Like I've learned 29 days out of 30 that the new customer acquisition setting in Performance Max doesn't work. But if I don't test it again tomorrow, I could get left behind because one day some Google engineer will realize like, oh goodness, we put the wrench where the sprocket should be. And then they fix it. And now all of a sudden the damn thing works and I'm the last to know. So you just have to be comfortable. It's so strange, man. Imagine every single day you have to put your hand on the stove to see if it's going to burn you. That's what running Google Ads is like at a professional level because there's so many changes being made so often. And so you can't take your experience at face value.
Which is counterintuitive to, I think, the last conversation that we had on this, where you actually felt the exact opposite was coming your way. The fact that the agency model, the media buyer, is going to eventually become just another cog in the machinery and no longer as valuable. But what I'm hearing from you is with the volume of stuff that you guys do, that is actually not the case because you have to
Maybe.
have some intelligence in there in order to make sure that the thing is working or no.
Well, I think, and this will get a little philosophical, but it might be a worthy philosophical discussion. So you tell me, Ralph, whether or not this is worth pursuing. I think looking at Newtonian time
You've lost me already.
as a factor, and all I mean by that is, I'm sorry, that's an obnoxious way to phrase it. Okay.
Apples falling on my head. Okay.
Uh,
Didn't you say you're supposed to speak at a third grade level
I
on the show?
am.
Well, the theory of relativity. Let's get into that just a tad, shall we?
No,
My good
what I'm
man.
trying to say is instead of benchmarking the way that you function with Google as though this will exist in perpetuity, which would be relative, the way that we have to exist with Google now, the context that is time is very important, and the context currently is Google's trying to replace us with AI. And so if you think about what I said, it actually makes a lot of sense. Like I have a dashboard in front of me, and the dashboard has 50 buttons and 2 novels and a wheel. And then I wake up tomorrow and there's 49 buttons, and they all do something a little bit different than they did yesterday. And then, now there's, instead of 2 levers, there's 3 levers, and there's 2 wheels, and so on and so forth. And this is Google. It's breaking us down into the simplest parts so it can ultimately replace us. I don't know. Have you ever seen that kids show Inside Out?
No.
Yeah, dude, it's phenomenal. It's one of the best. It's one of the best movies ever made. It's this animated film, and it talks about like the 5 key personality types that exist within you, and each has its own distinct character. And at one point during the movie of Inside Out, they go into this this part of it takes place in this little girl's brain, and so the characters go into the part of the little girl's brain that deals with abstract thoughts. And when they do that, they move from being 3-dimensional to, with having like really nuanced curves, and they're like fully scripted little artistic beings. And then all of a sudden they become blocks and they look like they're in Minecraft. And then from blocks, they get squeezed into 2-dimensional characters. And then they look like they're, kind of dumpy little cartoons. And then from 2-dimensional characters, they get squeezed into like just shapes, just like a line and a square and a circle. That's what this feels like. It feels like we're in the middle of the process of squeezing us into, from a 3-dimensional full-on decision-making autonomous being into, well, you're just a block and you can just, beep, beep, boop, beep. I can just move the way that I'm allowed to move. And then you're not even really moving as much as you're like just pressing. And then you're not even pressing as much as you're just a shape, and then you're gone. And so where I understand what you're saying as far as it sounds like the media buyer has much more to do. That's because we're in the trash compactor in Star Wars, and we're trying to fight the walls that are encroaching upon us. And what we have to do is fight the AI from doing what it wants to do.
Mm.
And maybe I'm just trying to protect myself from sounding like a hypocrite. How did I do?
I think the world still needs media buyers. That's what I think.
Dude, I don't disagree with you. It's not that the world doesn't need it. It's that the media companies on a long enough timeline aren't going to give you the buttons you need to buy.
Yeah.
That'll be up to them. It's going to be, give me your domain, give me your credit card, and then hit go.